All right. Welcome everybody. As I've mentioned on social media over the last week or so, I'm very excited today for the opportunity to bring Robert Glover in interview space. This has been definitely a long time coming. I got a chance to be in one of the coach training programs with Robert back in 2020, and ever since then, I've wanted to do this interview. So it's been a couple of years. Definitely more I want to say in terms of introducing Robert into the space, but just anything you want to share really quick, Robert, before we dive into my version of how I've come across you and No More Mr. Nice Guy.
I'll let you take the lead on it. It's good to be here with you. It's good to be able to talk with you and your followers on social media. And I always love these because they're an adventure. I don't know where they're going to go, but we just dive in and let them take us where they take us. So I'll let you take the lead.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and I do notice, is there a bit of lag on your side? I just want to check.
Shouldn't be. I have pretty fast internet, but let me.
Not on you specifically, but like, am I coming across clear to you?
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. So I've got Wi-Fi turned
Okay.
off, but I should be
Okay, great.
hardwired in.
Okay, cool. I just noticed might have been a bit on my side there. So, um, great. Well, the first thing, yeah, I think there might be a little bit on my side, but we'll assess it. We'll see how we go with this.
Okay.
But yeah, the first thing I'll share is that I came across Robert back in 2017. So I was a part of a community called the Dad's Edge Alliance, which is run by Larry Hagner. And I know you've come across Larry in the past, and so being in that community, that introduced me to the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. And at that time of my life, I was a new father. I'd been married for a couple of years. I'd been working as a correctional officer then, and it was quite an eye-opening experience, and it didn't take much for me to realize like the nice guy aspects of myself, because my whole life, people, not out of ill will, but people would always mention how I was such a nice guy. And
It's a compliment, right?
yeah, however you want to take it, right? But so it was very easy for me to really see quite quickly, like, oh, there's something here. There's a way that I'm showing up in the world that, yes, I have confidence. Yes, I have these other qualities, but there is these nice guy traits that are here with me. And so really the book was really an opening of a whole new journey, a journey that's really created my life to this point. And so it's hard to believe, that's already been 7 years since I came across that resource and then got a chance to connect with you back in 2020. So that's my brief introduction to
I
you. Then,
love
of
it.
course, I've been, in the world, sharing this work. So yeah, anything, again, my audience is going to know a lot about you already, and sort of the work that you've created, but anything you might want to share for people who would be new to you or maybe aren't as familiar of what you've been up to, over these last years.
Well, for over the last few years, of course, I made the move to Mexico. I was kind of doing the math on that, and actually, I've been living down here almost probably 14 years now, and I kind of surprised me it'd been that long. I just moved my private practice from Seattle and started coming down here for 6 months at a time. Did that for a few years and bought a house and 8 years ago and married a Mexican woman. And so I was telling you just where you're on the call. I just did my second interview this week in Spanish, which I couldn't have done that a few years ago. But that's the benefit of actually living in Mexico and having a partner that we speak all Spanish. So I've gotten to learn Spanish. The biggest thing that's really been in front of me for 2 to 3 years now is around. I've always been about building community for men because, for anybody that's read No More Mr. Nice Guy, I talk in there, don't try to do this alone. Find community, find safe people, whether it's a coach, a therapist, a 12-step group, a men's group, a church support group, whatever. And so I've always been about building community. When I was in private practice in Seattle, I was leading 5 men's groups a week. When COVID hit 2020, I started doing virtual, workshops because I couldn't do the in-person workshops. And about 3 years ago, somebody attending one of my workshops here in Puerto Vallarta said, Robert, you need to build a men's membership program. He said his wife has a sourdough bread membership program that had made $750,000 in the last 2 years. And I go, for sourdough bread? Wow. So that got me thinking and working. And, for about a year, I worked with several of my coaches to launch something that we now call Integration Nation. It launched a year ago. It's July 17th of this year will be our 1-year anniversary. And that's really where so much of my time and energy is gone. I still have books I want to write. I still have things I want to accomplish. But I really believe so much in community, and that men need tribe. We need brothers at our side to level up to the best version of ourselves and have our best lives, because that's helped me so much. I joined a men's program 7 years ago, and I probably hold the record for the longest membership in that program. And every part of my life got better. My relationship with my wife got better. My health got better. I'm in the best shape I've been in 15 years. Financially, just business wise. And when I started that program, I often said I had maybe 1.5 good guy friends. And that one half, he was on his way out the door. He'd burned too many bridges. And now I'm not making this up. I could call 50 different guys and say, I need you. And they get on an airplane, fly down here. Just kind of built that kind of bond, that kind of connection. I stay in touch with them. I was at a retreat up in Northern California last week where I was a guest speaker. And 5 or 6 guys were there from my men's program that, just some of them I knew were going to be there. Some I was totally surprised. And so like I was in Austin, Texas a couple of months ago, and I went down there to be a guest speaker there at a program and do some interviews, and went out to dinner 2-3 different nights with 8 to 10 guys that I know in Austin, Texas, because I did this men's program. So I'm really, I see my legacy nowadays as being, the Integration Nation, being this worldwide community. I want every man on the planet who wants to be in a men's program to have access at some level to a good community of men. And so I'm just, it's that's kind of been my where my energy's gone day and night, 7 days a week for the last, couple of years. And I'm 68. I made a commitment about a year ago. I thought, I can't even toy with the idea of retirement somewhere. I thought I'm in it for 20 more years. So that's what I'm most excited about. And like your story, when you were in a program with men, and you got introduced to my book, I'm sure along with a lot of other good quality content, you've got connected with men. And I'm sure that changed the trajectory of your life in significant ways, and in ways that you can't even predict ahead of time. Because so many guys, they don't know the joy of being in a men's group, a men's program, till they actually get there and open up and be vulnerable and find out they're not alone and they're not unique, and that, and that their judgments of other men are just judgments, projections. And it's just so life-changing, because being in a men's group changed my life. Years ago when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, I was in a couple different programs, 12-step program and just a general men's group. And then, like I said, for the last 6-7 years, same thing. I saw the need to get back into a program. So anybody listening to this, if you've ever thought, I wonder what it'd be like to have a men's program, men's group, take the steps and do it. Take the steps and do it. Because so many guys, it isn't until they actually get in that they find out what they were missing. And they find out, wow, this is what it feels like to have a band of brothers who've got my back and who are there for me, who I can tell anything to and they accept me. That's powerful.
Absolutely. And I love the beauty of this format that we get to have, because, I had a couple questions from the beginning, but you already, you touch on something I think so powerful for all of us. But like, what what do you see as that shift, like you talked about, from having, one and a half men who you could sort of be in contact and rely on, to now having an abundance of connection? What was it as easy as you just being in that men's group? Obviously I understand that there's work there, or like, was there an actual shift within you to seek that out?
That's a good question. People often say to me things like, Robert, you're so lucky. You get to live in a beautiful paradise, in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. You have this, beautiful wife that treats you like gold. You get to write books, you get to speak, you're making a difference in the world, you get to live your passion. You're so lucky. And my answer usually is no luck involved. Now, of course there
Hmm.
is, doors open that don't open until you actually start moving in a direction and point yourself. And I can't remember who it was that said, some kind of noted commentator said, it's funny, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Because, I got a PhD at 29 years old. I mean, that wasn't luck. That was hard work. I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy over a period of 6 to 7 years. I mean, that was work. 3 years to get it published. I've spent the last 20 something years, almost 25 years. I'm doing 11 interviews this week. I think that's the fullest week I've ever had for doing interviews. Like I said, 2 in Spanish even. I've worked my ass off to
Hmm.
to get where I am, because I worked my ass off in things I believe in. So when I was going back 7 years, when I was here in Mexico, just gotten married, having some struggles, and realizing I it was my third marriage, and we kind of a cultural judgment of oh, okay, what, 3 failed marriages or whatever, how we tend to look at it. And I'm like everybody else. When I get in a relationship, I want it to last, right?
Of
I'm
course.
not getting in it thinking, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. And we were already struggling, and I knew from previous experience I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't,
Mm.
because Einstein. I'll kind of paraphrase him. He said the same thinking that created the problem you're in is not going to resolve that problem. So whatever got me in my challenging situation, whatever my unconscious behaviors, pattern thinking was, I needed something different to help me move forward. And again, I'd had experience with men's groups and men's programs before, and I just went looking, and I lucked out. A guy
Yes.
attending one of my workshops, one of my guys in the certification program said, "Hey, I'm in this program." I said, "Sign me
Mm.
up." So, in terms of how did I go from one and a half good guy friends to having friends all over the world? A buddy of mine sent a picture yesterday, a couple days ago. He said, "I'm at a friend's house in Berlin." And he sent me a picture of the German version of No More Mr. Nice Guy. And they said, "My friend's in for such a ride." So I've got friends all over the world. And like I said, I can go to almost any city and just let some guys know. And I'm going to go out and have dinner with 3 or 4 people that I care about. People come and visit me. Robert, I'm coming to Puerto Vallarta, or my wife and I are coming. My family's coming. Can we get together? So I've worked my ass off to create the
Mm.
connections. Um, I text my friends a lot. I get up pretty much every Saturday or Sunday morning and send like a little emoticon meme, good morning, happy Saturday, to 25 to 30 people. I get on Zoom with my friends regularly. Like I said, if I'm traveling to a town where I know people, I arrange it ahead of time. A buddy of mine a couple months ago sent me a message, and he said, and he and I, we're both music fans, and he loves Pearl
Mhm.
Jam, and I'm from Seattle, but I've never been a giant Pearl Jam fan. I'm more of a Dave Matthews Band fan. So he sends me a message, says, Robert, if you can get to LA on, I think it's May 20th, whatever, I've got tickets 2 nights to Pearl Jam, VIP tickets. I'm taking my wife one night. I'll take you the other night. I mean, I'm thinking that's the kind of love, the guys
Yeah.
put me in the same category as their wives when it comes to who am I going to take to this extra ticket to Pearl Jam. And so I got to LA. I made it. I was always going to be in Seattle the week before.
Mhm.
I actually went to see the Rolling Stones up in Seattle, get to LA, and I've got another buddy who lives in Santa Barbara. So I drive up, spend a couple of days with him, drive back down, go to my other buddy, we go to Pearl Jam. So I find ways to make that happen
Mm.
because it's so valuable. I was doing an interview with one of my friends from the men's program who lives in Austin. Actually, he doesn't live in Austin, but he was in Austin running the workshop he invited me to. And he did an interview with me, a podcast. And when he introduced me, he said, basically, more than anybody he knows in this world, I am that guy that will keep the connections, will
Mhm.
follow up. Because you know how it is as guys. And I've been
Totally.
guilty of this much of my life. I don't talk to anybody I knew from college. My 50-year high school reunion is coming up this summer. I'm not going. I have no interest in going. But so I've spent a lot of my life, when we guys, if our relationship status changes, if we change jobs, if we have kids, if we move, we kind of fall out of touch with our guy friends. So I'm as guilty of that as anybody. So I just made a
Mhm.
decision when I got in that men's program. Every year, I made sure by the time that year ended, whether there's 45 guys in there or 70 guys, and sometimes there was over 70 men, I made sure I knew everybody's name and had
Mm.
spent some time talking with every single one of them, either live at a retreat or reaching out to them online. So I worked at it. That's
Yeah.
how much I believe. When I say don't do this solo, don't go it alone, find a community. I'm not going to preach anything I don't practice. And so I've really worked hard. And one of the big changes, just kind of from a personal point of view, the cycle that my wife and I had. She's Mexican, grew up 8 out of 10 kids in poverty in Guadalajara, Mexico. Father left when she was 5, alcoholic father, left the family for another woman. And I've asked her before, my wife Lupita, I've asked her, have you ever known a man that was faithful? No. I
Mm.
mean, she doesn't have to think about it. No. Dad, serial philanderer, brothers, serial philanderers. Every boyfriend she's had has been serial philanderer. It's part of the culture, part of macho culture. And of course, that's what she expects of me, that
Mhm.
I will cheat on her too. And down here, it's sport among the women to try to get the attention of men who are with a woman. It's how they fuck with each other. It's just part of the culture,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
she'll say that woman was flirting with you. That woman was coming. That waitress was leaning into you, and she's right a lot of the time. And so she has good reason to anticipate I'll be like every man she's ever known, that if I'm out of the house somewhere, if I'm out with my buddies, well, we must be out drinking and, picking up women because that's just what she's known. So this process of me building good men in my life, good guy friends, she's met any number of them, several in person where they've come to visit, or when she and I've traveled, I've introduced her to them. She's met my coach that I've worked with. He did a 2-hour session with us in Spanish a few years ago. If I'm online
Wow.
talking to one of my buddies and she comes to my door, I'll wave her in, and if she doesn't know the guy yet, I'll introduce her. She can say hi to my friends. So she's now come to see the quality of men I associate
Mm.
with, and that has gotten generalized. Oh, I trust my man because I can see the men he's with are trustworthy. So now when I go off to do a program, when I go off to work, when I leave town, when I get on an airplane, no accusations, no fear, no assuming I must have a girlfriend somewhere. I'm not, and it's actually changed her life, her way of viewing men,
Right.
to see me have a depth of connection with good men. It's been
Mm.
transformational for both me and for her.
That's amazing. I mean, like you're speaking to, right? Like the trust that's been generated from the experience that you've created in that sense, right? Like that,
Yeah.
from you building these connections and showing that, the quality of men that are out in the world, and I imagine, you know, obviously in the work in the space that you're in and the people that you're connected to, these are good men. But like
They're
just
good men,
just
yeah.
for her to be even experience that, that's really powerful.
And can't even know yet how that affects my 2 stepkids. I've got an 18-year-old
Hmm.
son. his girlfriend has lived with us for about 2 years. And my wife says they're both pretty jealous, both he and his girlfriend. Again, part of the culture. And I've got a 16-year-old stepdaughter. And well, they see me being a good man with good people coming into our home. And that's one reason I invite my buddies. If they're coming anywhere nearby, I say, come to the house. My wife makes great enchiladas. I want my kids to see men of all walks of life. I do workshops here in my house. You haven't gotten to do one of those. You did it virtually. But, 8 guys here in my home that my kids get to see, have some interaction with. They interact with my wife. She feeds us some good meals. So just, bringing the good men into my home. And plus it exposes my kids. They get to practice a little bit of English, with these people. And they get to see, because down here, if you don't get a good education, basically you're going to be a waiter or a taxi driver. And even those require some degree of English skills for the most part. So I want my kids to see that there's lots of options for them.
Totally.
And maybe also to reinforce that thing, education's valuable. To do what you want in life, you have to have skills. You have to have education. So again, just me deciding I needed good men in my life has had so many different trickle down effects to the people around me, the people in my life. And I know my friends value it as well. They'll reach out to me, they're excited to see me if I'm coming to town. They reach out and say, can I come visit? So, it's just trickle down. So again, I'll just keep preaching to whoever's listening. Don't do it alone. You can't even begin to guess the life transformation that occurs when you start opening up and connecting and getting vulnerable and spending time with men. And it's not all work, it's fun, it's play, it's being silly, it's being stupid, it's all the stuff that we guys do when we're together, but that's part of the mix, all part of the mix.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to shift a bit to your experience, on this topic of just men's development. And the first place I want to start with is, from when you started your journey in working with men, what have you seen over the years? From where it started with where kind of men are at as a a grouping to kind of what you're seeing now. Like, can you share just some insight on what you've kind of seen over the years?
Yeah, I don't know if it's radically different. I think what is amazingly different is what's been created by the internet. I started doing my own personal work about 30 years ago. And, I'm pretty sure the internet existed 30 years ago, but I don't know how many of us actually were using it. I don't think I was quite yet. So if you found anything, you found it either like through back then traditional media, like magazines, newspapers, things like that, or word of mouth. And so, for example, when I started my own personal recovery, I ended up in a 12-step group because I didn't really know where else to go. And you could find them relatively easily because they were pretty prominent. But I also kind of did a few, the Robert Bly, Iron John, mythopoetic stuff. I went out in the woods a few times and beat a drum and had the talking stick and said ho, and that was good. That was good stuff. I mean, I highly recommend the book Iron John. It really, I think, as much as any book, began the genre of books on men's personal development, and so. But there wasn't a lot more than that. Anything else I found kind of word of mouth. I was a therapist, so other therapists, a therapist friend told me about a men's group he was in. I joined that. And I did that for 5 or 6 years. And then later when I looked for other, it was still kind of challenging to find. So one thing that's really changed is you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a men's coach on the internet now, which I'm grateful for. I don't know if every 20 or 22-year-old life coach, I heard somebody say one time, oh, I'd love to have the enthusiasm of a 20-year-old life coach, that just, so there's a lot of good out there. Maybe there's some that still need some growth, even like the whole pickup community. it blew up really with the internet and YouTube and social media. Even that has seemed to mature over the years of guys that were teaching just, tricks and sticking feathers in your hat and doing NLP and magic tricks and hypnosis. Now actually talk about, developing your social skills and your social consciousness and just consciousness in general. So there's a lot more opportunities for men to find good resources, whether it's men's coaches, whether it's men's books, whether it's men's groups, whether it's there's just so much more available.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for that. Now, even in that light, I would venture a guess, and often interviewers will ask me, about this, because I think a lot of people see it. There's probably more nice guys now than there ever was.
Yep.
The younger generation that's growing up with social media, and they're becoming, in a sense, more and more passive and feminized because everything gets pushed to them. There's nothing really challenging them in their life, and there's no real masculine initiation. Another change that I've seen that I think is contributing to that growth is of nice guys, is that when I first started working with men, I assumed every nice guy maybe was just like me. Similar dad issues, similar mom issues, similar cultural issues. But I found out quickly they're not. I mean, there could be so many different types of family systems, cultural systems that create nice guys. So there's nice guys all over the world. But a common pattern was years ago, 25, 30 years ago, when I would talk to guys about their dads, is either dad was not there because divorced, maybe single mom, or dad worked all the time, so wasn't there. Or dad was angry or alcoholic, so wasn't safe. My dad kind of fit more of that angry dad. He was there, but kind of angry. So I learned to walk on eggshells. My mother said she was raising me to be different from my father, so I was trying to be different from dad. Now when I talk to younger generation, millennials, Generation Z, I guess now, the 20-somethings, many of them tell me that their father was a nice guy. And that what all their dad really taught them about life was don't piss off your mother. Because that's what dad was trying to do, was not piss off their mother. And so it makes sense. My son's 39. And so he was raised by a nice guy father. I started doing my work while he was an adolescent. He and my stepson encouraged that work along. Dad, you got to finish that book. There's a lot of guys. A lot of my friends need your book, Dad. So that was my then junior high school son who's now pushing 40, right? So that's a big change. There's a lot more nice guys
100%
raising kids. Now the good news is that there's that information. I don't have a count for how many books No More Mr. Nice Guy has sold, but I know, just from counting royalties over the last 20-something years, it's well over 1 million, and in different languages. And, even the fact that I can do 11 interviews in 1 week, is the content is out there to help men, whether they identify purely as a nice guy or just trying to understand what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be masculine? We've got another part of the change that I don't know if it's been a drastic change, because I grew up during the angry feminism of the 60s and 70s, where, all the bra burning and, there's some legitimate, issues, like equal pay for equal jobs, things like that. But there was a lot of rancor, venom. I thought maybe all women or all feminists kind of felt like, because, bumper stickers that said, every man's a rapist, erection's a sign of aggression. If you see that in the car in front of you. And, I'm going to make a generalization, but, years later, I would be talking to women who identified as feminists. And they go, that was just a few angry lesbians. That wasn't speaking for all women that wanted equality. I go, oh, okay, but that's what I heard, right?
Right.
I assumed that was the voice of feminism, or even Gloria Steinem's, woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Well, she went on to marry a wealthy guy. So I don't know. So I grew up with that. And then, recently, of course, we went through the hashtag Me Too, where, any man could just, through somebody making an accusation on social media, could lose his job, could lose his reputation without, benefit of a, of even knowing who his accuser is, or having, a just trial. People got fired just because. And so there's still that. And then, of course, the whole toxic masculinity thing
Hmm.
that I hope maybe is kind of tapering. Maybe we've hit the peak of all that whole, labeling everything that a man does as toxic masculine. But parents tell me their kids or boys come home from school, elementary school, so this means 7, 8 year olds, and saying, Mom, Dad, what's toxic masculinity? They were talking about that at school today. I mean, in the classroom, not just
Yes.
kids on the playground, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of been a wave of part of, maybe, I don't know if this is a third wave of feminism, to basically label, everything that men does as evil. Everything about patriarchy has got to be evil. So therefore men are evil, and men have always had all the benefits of everything. Now we're going to take it away from men and give it to the people that have not had those benefits. So I think that's been kind of a big wave. I'm actually optimistic that maybe that pendulum has about reached its peak. I can't say for sure, where I think now we're actually can have some more intelligent discussions. So it's not just pendulum swings one side to the other, that we can actually, talk about, what is masculine consciousness? What is masculine love? What's masculine leadership? What's masculine empowerment? Without just, anytime you have the word masculine empowerment in the same sentence, it must be evil and it must be stopped,
Yeah.
because it's inherently, oh no, men have had all the power all along. We got, we can't give them any more power. But masculine empowerment is really a consciousness and empowerment that makes a man, levels him up to be the best version of himself, and he's out making the world a better place as well. So I think, not 100% sure, but I think the dialogue is beginning to shift
Mm.
to a little bit more rationality, and not just, reaction, not just throwing out a few terms that we just now plaster on every person and every behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a couple of the things that you spoke to that really, resonate, me too, in the sense that the men that I'm talking to these days, I almost kind of chuckle in a sense, because they're like, when they kind of discover like, oh, I'm a nice guy, I'm like, well, join the club, because most of the world are nice guys now,
Yeah.
and so, it's almost, in a sense, it's like finding the strength in that, right? Finding the strength in, like,
We
yeah,
got a club, we got a community,
yeah,
we got tribe where we get to go be in the Norm Mr. Nice Guy tribe. And
totally.
and again, a lot of the nice guys we see, I think maybe it was Chris Williamson asked me a couple months ago, he says, why is nice guy syndrome so sticky?
Mm.
And I thought that's such a good question. Why are there so many more and more nice guys? And you reference, especially in terms of this trying to please women.
Hmm.
And I say, so if you think about it, a guy trying to please women makes perfect sense. That if you think we come into the world, we're totally dependent, needy infants, and we're our first caregiver, typically our mother, a woman, or maybe, another woman took care of us, maybe a nanny, au pair, babysitters. We go to preschools, usually women. Elementary school is mostly women. And, I've often said, just to get from second to third grade, not only do you have to learn your reading, writing, and arithmetic, but how to please a woman, right? And the funny thing is, no matter how hard we men try to please women, we've never quite figured it out. We never do really seem to get it right. Maybe it can't really be done. But it makes sense that we would grow up to be adult males still
Hmm.
trying to please women. And now when you add in, so much of the early feminist wave of the rancor against men, add in hashtag Me Too, add in social media, where, a woman could just post anything that she wants about a guy on social media, and the guy's got no defense, to where even in the workplace, I know in the U.S., there are federal laws that require companies that if they have a female employee that she feels harassed or uncomfortable, the company has to take action on that, has to protect her, or they're going to get sued. So, for example, if you're in the workplace as a guy, and men know this, and just having a conversation with a woman. Maybe the woman was even flirting with you. Maybe you're at an event and you had a couple drinks and she's, giving you a phone. And all of a sudden she goes to HR and says, he's been making me uncomfortable. Well, they're going to take your badge. You're going to put yourself in a box and they're going to show you the door. There are no questions asked because they know, number one, the laws are on the favor of the woman and they know women are litigious, right? And they know the man's not going to sue to keep his job. So they just they've calculated the cost already.
Yes.
They'll show the guy the door. All the woman has to say is making me uncomfortable. That's it. Period. So we're walking around on eggshells with this. I mean, I did an interview a few months ago with a 20-year-old podcaster. I think I was his first interview ever. And the guy was good. The guy was good. And he said, he had an experience where he had I think his girlfriend's birthday. I don't remember the exact details, but a bunch of friends got a hotel room, and he and his girlfriend, I don't know if they'd all been drinking or whatever, but they crashed on the bed, and there are other people around in the hotel room, and the next day, basically, the girlfriend was going to post on social media that he did something that made her uncomfortable, and he didn't even know what it was, but a friend came and told him that, and the female friend talked her out of it. And he said, what advice would you give to young men in terms of approaching women, especially being overtly interested in them physically or sexually in this world of social media? And I go, I don't have a clue. I don't actually know. I can come up with usually a pretty good answer to most questions, but I don't know what you tell a 16, 18, 20-year-old of how do you be assertive with a young woman in a world of social media where she can just now go say anything she wants, even if, for example, everything's consensual, which hopefully it is, and maybe you kiss, maybe you have sex, and then she can go post on social media how bad you were in bed. And that's just what the young generation has grown up with. So to bring it all back, it makes sense that we men would either be MGTOW, go our own way, or incels, or, just not want to have anything to do with women or walk on eggshells and try to please them. It makes sense that that's there. And I said, but here's the part that's missing. Our ancestors, if you go back to tribal times, we were communal and we shared everything. We were hunters and gatherers. And the men would take the boys, pre-adolescence, adolescence, take them out, put them through a masculine initiation. Prior to that, they'd been with the women, right? They stayed in the little tribe of the women and the kids and the old people while the men went out, hunted and gathered and fought other tribes. Once they hit 12, took them out, strapped them down to a red ant hill and, let the ants eat on them all night. Maybe took him out on a vision quest, out by himself for no food for 3 or 4 days. Maybe did a sun dance, put hooks in his chest. And, while he fasted, he stared at the sun, something to help the boy face his fear of death, to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, to move him into the frightening world of the adult masculine and out of the world of the feminine, the cozy, I call it the, I just slipped my brain of what I even call it. The nursery, get him out of the nursery. And nowadays, so many young men, even not so young, live in the nursery. Everything's pushed to them. They're online. They're binging on Netflix. They're binging on online porn. They're surfing for stuff they don't need on the internet. They're playing video games all hours of the night. They're on social media. Everything's pushed. Everything's feminine. Nothing's required of them because nobody's ever initiated them into the scary world of the masculine. And so that's a piece that's missing. And I think that's a core reason why nice guy syndrome keeps growing, especially in terms of seeking this external validation from women, is that when a young boy in previous times, once he was taken away from the women, taken away from that smaller tribe within the tribe, and went through masculine initiation, he now spent most of his time with men, right? He went out, hunted, gathered, fought, did everything, and then had access to the women of the tribe for sexual access. But we didn't spend that much time with women. It's only been after World War II that men started spending quite a bit more time with women, that we started thinking of the opposite sexes, even considering them as our best friends. Right. And I'm not saying we need to go back to something, I'm just saying that we're living in a unique part of history where, again, boys just grow up with all this feminine influence, and they're told what not to be, or they're told, don't be like that jerk, don't be like that asshole, don't be like your father, don't be a toxic male, don't be this. But we're not taught what to be. We're
Yes.
not given the tools to go thrive in the masculine world. The masculine world, actually, once a guy kind of figures this out, the masculine world's a lot easier than the feminine world.
Mm-hmm.
Masculine world, when you hit a home run. Yeah, when you made a basket. When you scored a touchdown. When you made $1 million. When you bought your first BMW. When you got the promotion. Masculine world is that measurable, attainable. You know it. You know where your status is. World of the feminine, it's ever changing. It's chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
It's drama. It's like, it's this one day, it's this 1 minute, and this the next minute, right? And so men trying to figure out how to navigate that feminine world, we're not going to win. We're not going to win in that world. But if we can get over into the masculine world and have the masculine initiation and be able to learn to get that internal validation that I solved the problem. I was masterful. I procrastinated, but then I got busy and got it done. When the masculine is internally validated through masterful action. The feminine is externally validated through desire or praise or attention. And that's what most young men kind of still trying to get, is that attention or praise or desire. So again, I don't think it's the world's fault. I don't think it's women's fault. I don't think it's young men's fault to spend all their time on social media. But I think if anything's going to be different, we've got to get men into tribe and into masculine initiation for anything to be different. And that's not going back to some old school patriarchy, men dominating women kind of thing, but it's about men just be able to take control of their own lives and be to lead self and to be somebody that others might want to follow, including a good women and maybe their children.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, one thing I'll speak to, and I think it kind of speaks to that dynamic that you're talking about before, where you've got young men who are seeing that their fathers were nice guys. Well, even for me, I've kind of gone through that experience of my 20s, trying to be trying to get approval of women,
Sure.
kind of going down that path, even as I got into marriage, right? Like those dynamics were there. But now, as I've been doing this work for a number of years, I have two boys. I have a 7-year-old, I have a 5-year-old at this point. And they are in, the education system right now that is all female dominated, right?
Yeah.
And I can see like the seeping of boyhood and masculinity in those spaces. And that's been so beautiful to be the father that can actually hold that space for them, that like, hey, that's what's happening at school, but you can still be a boy. You can
Yeah.
still, play the games that you want to play. And, obviously there might need to be some development or some ways that you're communicating, but fundamentally you being a boy is okay. And
Yeah.
that's been powerful.
Yeah. And as a dad, you can teach the differences. 'Cause I remember when I was raising my son and stepson, they were 6 months apart. And for example, they spit a lot. And I don't remember spitting a lot, but I actually did a little research, and apparently it's a pretty normal male behavior, especially male adolescent, because there's testosterone in saliva. And
Right.
just like, I take my dog to the park, the dogs are pissing all over the place. They're marking territory. And so apparently even adolescent males spitting, even though they don't know it, part of their evolutionary, wiring, is normal. It's normal. Okay. So here's the feminine response to boy spitting, masculine response. My wife at the time would like, that's gross. Don't spit, and that's probably what I grew up with. It's probably why I didn't spit. I probably got messages, don't do that. But the masculine response was, okay, boys, spit your hearts out to your, spit all you want, but do it over on the grass, not on the sidewalk, right? They got some limits for how they were going to behave. Another one was swearing. They'd come home and, your boy's already swearing, I'm sure. You know, they learn it. They learn it from the neighbors, right? All the
Yes,
words you don't want them
neighbors.
saying. The neighbors, neighbor kids. So they'd come home swearing, and you know, my wife would be, God damn it, don't say that, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So we had to teach them, okay, swearing's okay, but there's parameters for it, you know. And so in our house, the rule was, if you're playing a video game and you're playing Mario Kart and you crash, it's okay if you swear. That's all right. But you don't swear at your brother or sister. You don't swear at us. We kind of taught them the rule in baseball. I was watching a little bit of a baseball game yesterday. My team's Seattle Mariners, and the shortstop got ejected from the game for arguing balls and strikes with the umpire.
Right.
So you can be as unhappy as you want with the umpire in baseball, but there's certain rules. If you're looking out the other direction away from him and not your body language isn't showing him up, you can swear your head off. You can say anything you want to say. But as soon as that player took his, you know, got called out on a high third strike, threw his helmet down in the batter's box, you knew he was right on the edge. And as soon as he turned his body to face the umpire, he was gone before he even said a word. Now, of course, he got a few more words in after he'd been ejected, and the manager came out. He got ejected too. But there's rules for how that works, right? So I tell my sons, there's rules. If you're swearing on the playground and you get grounded, that's on you, right? That's on you. If you get into a fight on the playground, if somebody was bullying you and you stood up for yourself, I got your back. But if you were bullying somebody else, no, you're going to deal with the consequences. So they needed instruction, how to spit, how to swear, how to stand up for themselves. And, you know, we'd go to bat for him. When my stepson both my sons were 6 foot tall when they were 12. So, playing Little League baseball, they were often taller than their coaches or the umpires, right?
Wow.
And so crazy. My son's in sixth grade, my stepson, tall, and all they had chairs, chairs with the little kind of quarter desk, secured to them that you kind of got to. He couldn't fit in these chairs. They were for smaller people. We went to the school and said, can you get him a larger chair or desk? He can't sit all day in a chair made for somebody that's 5'4". He's 6 foot tall. They go, we don't have any. We can't accommodate him. And I'm going, how's the kid supposed to? So he knew we had his back, right? That we did what we could. So your boys, are going to need you to give them that masculine initiation. The spitting is fine, but here's the context for how you do it. The swearing is fine, but here's the context of how you do it. You being a sexual being, when my boys were teenagers, when broadband brand internet pretty much became more ubiquitous in homes. We waited for it. We had dial-up. Finally, we got, cable broadband in our home. And no matter where we put the computer in the house, our boys were spending all the time stealing music on Napster and looking at porn. And so we finally had to go back to dial-up. We finally got rid of broadband because, porn is not interesting with dial-up. There's a line. There's a line. Oh, I think that's a boob. I think it's a no. Yeah. So the other thing was, remember we took a trip to Las Vegas. Back then they were promoting it as, a family friendly, vacation. It's not. It wasn't, and it probably still isn't family friendly. My boys' luggage, I went through their luggage before we left Vegas. They had false IDs, they had porn videos, they had, gambling paraphernalia. I mean, they'd just been out collecting anything they could collect, flyers for strip clubs. And so, I took most of it out of their suitcase and didn't tell them that I had. But, my wife one time found some porn videos in my stepson's drawer. I can't believe he's looking at this stuff. And I said, okay, new rule. You don't go through his drawers. Told my wife. That's off limits. That's not your job anymore. It's my job. And so I talked with him. I said, okay, I've told your mother, stay out of your drawers. I, though, will check every now and then. And if I like something, I'm taking it. No, I told him that if it's beyond what I think your maturity level, I will tell you I'm taking it. I'll tell you why, and I'll take it. If it's something that I think's normal 15-year-old, whatever, amateur porn, whatever, fine. It's okay. But your mother's off limits. I even did the same thing with the discipline with
Mm.
both of my sons, because my son was living with his mother, my ex, and my stepson, him, his mom and I. At about 13, 14, I took both of the women out of the disciplinary role with the
Mm.
boys. I said, no more. You're the mother, you're the lap. They can come to you when they just need some nurturing, some care, just need some mom time. From here on out, I'm the disciplinarian. Because their discipline would be they just go off yelling at them they just
Right.
overreact to stuff. And I said, no, and that shifted everything. They just got to be the mother. The boys didn't have to figure out how to make their moms happy. They had to deal with me and masculine structure and discipline, which they liked a lot better because I didn't yell. I just said,
Mhm.
we're not going to do it that way. You do it that way again, here's the consequence. Understand? Uh-huh.
Mm.
Okay. They go, can I pull the car out of the driveway now? Yeah. But here's the deal. Here's the drill. You talk like that to your mother again, you and I are having a conversation, you're going to have some consequences.
Mhm.
So that even helps. So that's the roles you can play, is
Mm.
take those roles on to take all that masculine energy they've got and help them channel it in ways that serve
Yeah.
them rather than come out in toxic or unconscious ways. So
Absolutely.
that's where you can raise your boys up and give them that gift.
I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. Last place I want to ask you about is, so what do you see as next for yourself? As you continue on this pathway of creation and living, what do you see as sort of the next place? I don't want to necessarily say fulfillment, but like, what is that next part of the journey for you in terms of living the life that you want to live?
Well, the Integration Nation, like I said, I've committed next 20 years of my life to it. I'm all in. Who knows what direction things may go? I almost died 7 years ago. I had a tumor blocking my small intestine. Nobody could figure it out. I was in pain for months, lost 30 pounds. And, luckily found it, had surgery, and I've been fine. At 68, a lot of guys, my dad retired at 55. So
Hmm.
I know I won't retire, but because I love what I do. I want to write some more books still. I've got an RV parked up at my mother's house in Seattle. I enjoy spending time in that, traveling around. But I've also got a satellite dish I can take with me, so I can be online anywhere I go. What two things I really still want to do, and hopefully I live long enough to do them. But they're priorities. Excuse me. One is I want to write a book on the ruminating brain. I've got a course on that I've
Mm-hmm.
taught for years.
Hmm.
I think that concept around ruminating brain is as eye-opening and transformational as the information in No More Mr. Nice Guy. For
Yes.
people that are just walking around hearing this crazy guy talking in their head all the time, they think that's normal. It's nice to find out, oh, that's just a glitch in my inner workings, a glitch in my brain. I'm not as fucked up as it tells me I am. It's like reading No More Mr. Nice Guy going, oh, it makes sense now. So I
Mhm.
really want to get a book done on ruminating brain. And I've charted out a 5-book fiction series for boys, starting with a young man's journey from his 11th birthday, like through his 19th birthday. So there's a book that starts on his 11th birthday. The next book starts on his 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th. It goes all the way from him trying to show off for a young girl and falling on his skateboard and hitting his head, and then he wakes up and there's a talking chihuahua next to him, to where his mentor is this wise chihuahua. So where it kind of outgrows that, maybe goes through his own struggles with around addiction, with acceptance, with sexuality, maybe goes through treatment, gets another wise mentor, maybe a Jungian therapist who's former professional athlete. I've got all the story worked out.
Mhm.
Or maybe the story ends, he's out on a vision quest somewhere, or in Peru doing ayahuasca or plant medicine, where it takes us, from 11 to into his 20s, where I teach all the concepts I teach men about
Mhm.
nice guy syndrome, about positive emotional tension, about conscious relationship with women. But I teach all that to boys at age appropriate, and to where, a boy might start this reading, like Harry Potter, start it maybe when he's 11 and keep reading it till he's, a young adult. or he may find it as a young adult and go back and start reading
Yes,
earlier books. So that's
that's
something
really
that
cool.
I would really like to get to. It'd be a different kind of challenge to write fiction,
Yeah,
but to write the fiction over developmental stages in a boy's life, addressing the things that boys address that maybe don't have any way to get those things addressed in their life. So that, getting Integration Nation up and running to where I don't have to like monitor it 24/7 is a goal. And then, maybe relaxing a little bit in the
mhm,
RV. I love speaking. I love going to events. So hopefully I get to keep doing those kinds of things. But yeah, those two books, The Ruminating
that's
Brain
excellent.
and the Simp series. I want to get that. I want to get that written.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this absolutely the topic of the ruminating brain. I mean, it shows up often in my work, just with men not being able to shut off the monkey mind,
Yeah.
that's running. So that's beautiful in itself. And then obviously a fiction series, in that sort of developmental years, those years of pre-teenage to the teenage years. I mean, that's powerful. So
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I've said for a while now that, my granddaughter is 17. She'll be 18 in October, and she's just, I've always, everybody thinks their grandkids are amazing. At 3, she understood reverse psychology, figure of speech, and she was just smart. At 8, I go visit her every year on her birthday. At 8, she was describing um, uh, human evolution and natural selection to me. At 9, she was describing Big Bang Theory and the expanding cosmos. While we're like sitting in the hot tub talking, on her birthday. And I go, "Do you watch Cosmos?" She goes, "Yeah." Doesn't everybody watch Cosmos? And my son's got a master's in wildlife ecology, and so he's an outdoor guy. And so my granddaughter always loved outdoors. She plays soccer. She plays volleyball. She runs track. So she's just she's smart, honor student. So just she's active, outgoing, smart, strong. She grew up with a strong man. My
Hmm.
son, he was not Vietnam, but an Iraq vet. He was a Marine, a former AAU weightlifting champion at 15 years old, and he's custodial parent of my granddaughter. And she grew up seeing me a lot. Another strong man. I think it was there on her 15th birthday. She says, "Grandpa, my computer science course, we were all looking up our grandparents, and I have the most famous grandfather. Because you've done so many interviews, and you're so much on the internet." She said, "I was also voted the sexiest grandfather because there's a picture of me about 15 years ago with no shirt on." And I go, I really wish that wasn't even on the internet, but it is. So I've always said I want to affect a generation of young men that will give my granddaughter the choice
Mm,
of strong men that can match her strength, that can match her heart, her wisdom, just and I was so excited because when I was visiting her on her 16th birthday, we're having lunch and she said, "Grandpa, the boy that's taken me to the homecoming dance, his parents are reading your book."
mm,
And I go, boom, success.
yeah.
That's why, when the boys out there that are taking my granddaughter out, their parents are reading No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's what I was shooting for. So hopefully that series of books for young men will add to that and give, even strengthen the pool of qualified men for my granddaughter and just all the young women like her who need a strong, integrated, open-hearted, conscious man. So
Mm.
so that's what I'm
That's
about.
wonderful. And it's a wonderful, both vision and purpose, as well that you're creating there to create that, to be that beacon, that just for that generation, and again, it's not just that generation. It's every generation living, of men that can be impacted by your work. So that's beautiful. Anything else you want to share before we start to wrap up for today?
Oh, I'm good. It feels like I've been talking all day long. um, no, I just appreciate the chance to come talk with you and the people listening. And I'm passionate about
Hmm.
what I do. I'm fortunate. I consider myself very fortunate that I'm alive, and I have a platform and the visibility and the reputation that I can make a difference. I can make an impact, and hopefully I can keep using that in positive ways to make the world a better place for men and women and for our children. So thank you for the opportunity to come talk
Absolutely.
to your crew, and appreciate the work you're doing, and I love that I can support so many men's coaches, podcasters that are out there. Just they're they're wanting to communicate to the world what they've learned and what's helped them. So thank you for
Mm,
the invitation to come talk with you and talk to your people.
absolutely. And can I give you some acknowledgement as well
Bring it, bring it.
yeah,
I'll let you.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I really acknowledge, I was sort of sitting with this in our conversation, but I really acknowledge you for both the courage and just the authenticity that you brought in those years to really bring No More Mr. Nice Guy to light. I mean, I know that it probably doesn't seem like much, but like it is such an impactful resource, and you are such an impactful man that like I see ripples of this work everywhere.
Mm,
And I truly acknowledge you for that, because without you creating that, we wouldn't have gotten that resource. We wouldn't have gotten this whole movement to be created. And so that really starts from you.
thank you.
And a couple other places I really want to acknowledge you for is like I really feel the power of who you are, like the true masculinity of who you are, and like the integrity that comes with that. Like it's so present. But I think the thing that is also so present is the lightness and the play and the fun that you bring as well. I mean, it's such a beautiful gift that you can bring all those qualities of masculinity and have fun with it.
Yeah,
And that's just awesome. So thank you
thank you.
for being that man.
Well, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about being an integrated man, that we can take all these parts of ourselves, all the way from the silly, funny, let's get
Yes,
stupid part to the serious, let's put a dent in the cosmos part of ourselves. And so
absolutely.
thank you for that feedback. I hear it and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Again, if you want to check out Robert's work, you can go to robertglover.com. And as he's mentioned about Integration Nation as well, that website's up and running and it's very active. So check it out. And thanks so much. If you have any questions afterwards that you want to share with either of us, I'll make sure to get them and bring them to Robert as well, and we can jam on those further. So thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Thank you, Andrew.